I'm Maya Carroll.
And I'm Steve McShane from McShane's Nursery.
Coming up in our next half hour, we'll begin in the garden. We'll have tips for a successful garden.
Soil basics, tips from top gardeners, and how to cook up some of that garden's bounty. All coming up next. I'm Steve McShane from McShane's Nursery.
And I'm Maya Carroll. Welcome to this edition of Begin in the Garden.
Man, why do we call it Begin in the Garden?
Because so many things begin in the garden. Good nutrition, healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, cooking, begin in the garden.
Well, that's what this segment's all about. Getting started, beginning in the garden. The fundamentals and basics to getting started in gardening. Well, soil gives life in the garden, there's no doubt about it. And the diversity of soil here in Monterey County is incredible. Right here, I've got what we call topsoil. This topsoil actually came from the Marina area, and you can see the amount of sand in it. What I have here are some samples of some various soils from different parts of the county. So now out towards Fort Ord, along the 68 corridor in Monterey, I have a sample of a soil that has quite a bit of the shale and the sandstone in it. It doesn't have a lot of humus, it doesn't have a lot of the good stuff that we want in a good topsoil, the organic matter that really generates life. In the case of this soil, it was very clayey, very rocky, and I recommended a lot of amendment. A lot of good topsoil like we see here, but more importantly, organic matter in the form of compost or humus. We'll look at some of that material in just a moment. More North Salinas up in Prunedale, I have this sample here. And you can see it's just got more organic matter to it. It's a little bit of a deeper brown. Boy, and it really holds well. You get a little bit of moisture to it, and it really holds together well. There's more nutritional value in this soil than, say, in the soil that I had shown you from the 68 corridor. This sample here comes from Salinas. This is some of the best soil I've seen in a lot of my sampling, and it's actually in a garden that we're going to visit later on in this segment. You can see some of the organic matter actually present in the soil. Roots, grass, that's the stuff that generates life in soil. Certainly a darker, richer brown, a lot more organic matter in this soil. You see, the top 12 to 18 inches of a soil profile are probably the most important parts of what we need in our soil. That's where a lot of the root penetration is taking place. That's where a lot of the growth is taking place. At the end of the day, the darker the soil, the better. And also, the more sand, the better the drainage, the better. Soil that's high in clay, super high in clay, needs to be amended. And there are actually plenty of products out there to manage our soil. Getting our soil in the best shape possible for container gardens or for a vegetable garden is really the first step, kind of what this segment's based on. So let me bring some of the products forward that I'd like to showcase that'll really give you an idea of what you can do to your soil to improve its liveliness.
Now that Steve has given us some soil basics, it's time to size up your soil. No matter what the problem, Steve has a solution.
All right, our adventure continues. So many things that can be done to amend your soil and actually improve its liveliness. The first thing I'll recommend is organic matter. So if you're suffering from soil that's very rocky and doesn't have a lot of organic matter and isn't very rich and that nice brown look to it, then you can add what we call a soil amendment or compost. Many nurseries carry all sorts of soil builders. In the case of this puppy, we have rich organic matter, primarily derived from redwood compost, but also in here is chicken manure. Chicken manure adds a great source of nitrogen, doesn't contribute a lot of salts, and boy does it help things grow. But this sort of material will improve drainage. It'll also improve the nutrient cycling in the soil. So very important amendment. Depending on what you're working with in your garden, there's a lot of other nutrients that can be added as well. This here is bone meal. This is derived naturally from the environment, and it adds a high concentration of phosphorus, also trace potassium. This will help in the nutrition of soil. This here is alfalfa meal. Alfalfa meal is known to really promote a lot of microorganism growth inside the soil. Microorganisms are real important. In just a teaspoon, there's over 1 billion microorganisms in our soil. And those microorganisms are busy breaking down that organic compost and actually providing it in a form ready for plant uptake. This alfalfa meal is like steroids for microorganisms. They love alfalfa. So by applying this to your soil environment, you're really promoting good microbial health. A couple of other things that also are important. Blood meal. Blood meal is naturally derived and also contributes a high percentage of nitrogen to the soil. One thing I always tell people is that in soil, one of the most important relationships is the carbon to nitrogen relationship. Carbon comes mainly in the form of organic matter. Nitrogen is present in the air, it's present in the air in the soil, and it's also naturally occurring in the soil. Microorganisms that break down the carbon in this compost also tie up nitrogen. So it's important that when you apply compost to balance the soil environment with an organic source of nitrogen. For all of us that live in the Salinas Valley and suffer from a lot of clay, the #1 solution for breaking up clay that's the easiest without totally amending your soil is gypsum. Gypsum works on a microscopic level to break up clay particles. Gypsum's very high in calcium, and calcium as a molecule has got a big plus charge to it. It gets into the clay surface and it pushes other nutrients out and pushes the clay particles apart, literally. And boy does it make a difference. You see results almost immediately with water uptake. You see farmers applying this in huge amounts in fields in the Salinas Valley. So gypsum is a great amendment, it's cost effective, and almost immediately it makes nutrients available and it breaks up your clay. The last product that I'll mention in the nutrients is actually seaweed extract. This actually comes from kelp meal. And I'll tell you, it's more and more proven by the University of California that seaweed, and in particular kelp, like alfalfa, contributes to microorganism growth. Boy, does it really help in root penetration, nutrient availability, and just the overall health of your soil. All of these sort of products are natural in how they come about and naturally applied, and they really do a lot for building your soil.
If you have a question about your garden, why not go to a master gardener? Tom Carwin is with me. He is a master gardener, and thanks very much for being here.
Glad to be here.
People call a hotline that the Master Gardeners Organization provides. Why did that hotline get started?
That was the Master Gardener program is generally works to help the cooperative extension program of the University of California. The cooperative extension specialists work primarily with the agricultural industry, and they have a big job. There's a great deal of agriculture going on in the Monterey Bay area. So they're kept very busy, and yet they receive phone calls from home gardeners and aren't able to respond to them well. So they formed the Master Gardeners many years ago. Every county in California has a Master Gardener program. Primarily designed to take those questions from home gardeners that the agricultural specialists really can't spend the time on. So the Master Gardeners are a volunteer group trained by the University of California to respond to questions that home gardeners have.
How do you become a Master Gardener?
Well, there is a training program that's done once a year. It's organized by the volunteers themselves. The class runs for almost every Saturday, most Saturdays, for 6 months.
What is it that you love about the garden?
Well, I think because of the diversity of the exercise, of gardening, it has a little bit of everything in it. Certainly, in many respects, it's an art form. Ornamental horticulture can be a creative exercise in terms of colors and shapes and fragrances and things of that sort. It's also good physical exercise, just to keep moving. It's also a scientific aspect to it. Just the process of promoting the growth of plants does require an understanding of botany and how plants survive and what makes them thrive.
If people want to call the hotline or find out more information about what the Master Gardeners have to offer or to participate, what should they do?
Well, I can think of 3 ways right off. One is the hotline, and the people there will both answer questions on the spot or call you back if they have to study the question. They can also, on the internet, go to MontereyBayMasterGardeners.org. There's a wealth of information about gardening. And then finally, the website that we have for special events is smartgardening.org, and that includes the Water Smart Garden Contest, the Smart Gardening Fair, and the Water Smart Garden Tour. Gardening is all about the future, and that's a good thing because we're always looking to see what's next in the garden.
Why not use your garden to entertain? In our Garden to Grill segment, Chef Todd will cook up some tasty treats, the ingredients you can grab from your own garden.
Hi, I'm Chef Todd, and we're taking you from the garden to the grill. And today we're preparing some grilled vegetable tostadas on a grilled flour tortilla. We finish with a little crumbled cotija cheese. So we're just using a standard store-bought flour tortilla, and we're gonna drizzle those with a little bit of olive oil, and then we're gonna put them on the grill to get them nice and crispy. So by putting just a little extra virgin olive oil on there and rubbing it on each tortilla, and then setting those right on the grill, we're gonna start them to get nice and crisp, and it's a nice lower fat way to have a nice crisp tostada shell. Moisturize the skin at the same time. A little bit of olive oil on each side. We want those to go just until they're fairly, golden brown and crispy. They might bubble on you a little bit. It gives you the foresight to go ahead and flip them. Just about done. Go ahead and pull those off, and you can see how crisp they've gotten without burning them. And as they cool, they'll crisp up a little bit as well. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get a little bit of corn ready so that we can grill this corn and we'll shuck it, get it grilled, and we're going to use it kind of just over the top just to finish our tostada off. Just going to set that corn right on the plate, and then again, just a little bit of olive oil drizzled on there, not a lot. And then we'll just kind of roll that around, get that well coated. Then we're going to add a little bit of salt and pepper so that when we grill, the flavor's there. It'll stick to the oil now so that it stays on the corn. This is going to take about 12 minutes all said and done. So you got a little bit of time here. That's why I keep them off to the side of the grill, leaving the grill available should you need to work on anything else at the same time. You're going to do about 4 minutes in each position, really, and kind of a quarter turn each every 4 minutes just to get them ready. You want a nice good char in there. Corn being high in sugar will char nicely. It's got a lot of moisture, so we'll actually add some nice beautiful grill marks. It's going to get a nice smokiness that we'll add to our dish and just really enhance the flavor, bring out a little more vibrancy of the corn, nice and sweet. So next what we're going to do is we're going to get the vegetables ready to grill for our tostadas. And what we're doing is just taking a little yellow bell pepper and we're just cutting off the edges into 4 or 5 and getting that end piece too that we can use to grill. We're going to set those on a platter, because we're going to have to toss those with just a little bit of olive oil to keep them from sticking to the grill. Now we can use other oils. You can use a grapeseed oil or canola oil. I happen to really love the flavor that olive oil imparts, so I generally use good California olive oil. And we've got some scallions that we're going to take, and basically we're not going to use the very end of them. We're going to go ahead and remove that. That can be used later in a salad or as a garnish for some other things, but we don't want that much of it. We're going to use, and then we're just going to kind of take those green onions. Like one bunch is enough. Take those green onions and just remove the ends of each of those. Get those off to the side. Okay. So now we're going to just make sure those green onions are clean, pull off some of the excess loose leaf at the bottom. Like most onions, they have layers. And then we're also doing some portobello mushrooms. So if we were to remove the stem, and by taking the stem off, it does expose the gills a little bit, so the gills can tend to get your hands dirty. But we're basically just going to cut those portobellos one time in half and set those off to the side. Okay. You can see our corn's looking good. It's starting to get that nice charcoal on there, nice char on there. So we've also got just some large patty pan squash. And we're just going to take the ends off of those on both sides. And then we're just going to cut those into 3 or 4 nice big slices. And those two can be set aside and ready to be drizzled with a little olive oil to grill for our tostada. And you want those vegetables somewhat well coated with the oil so they don't stick to the grill. But if your grill is nice and clean and it can be brushed with a little oil as well, you shouldn't have a problem with the vegetables sticking. So again, same with the scallions, same with the peppers. Just working them around, getting them well coated. Now, one of the processes that you need to go through in getting your grill ready is making sure that you've brushed it well. You should, if you have any hot spots, you want to try to avoid the hot spots. Right here we've got a hot spot right in the center, and usually the way you can tell is if you can't hold your hand over it for more than 5 seconds, you've got a really hot zone that you want to try to avoid, because 2 things. We've got a little oil on these vegetables, and if we go to drop them on the grill and there's a little bit of excess oil that falls off, it's going to flare up on us. It's going to cause a lot of burning of the oil, a lot of carcinogens to kind of saturate into the food. So I want to try and avoid that. We have this hot spot right in the center. We might be able to turn it down a little bit, but we're just going to try to avoid that. We're going to work the edge of the grill primarily. Give our corn just one more little turn to keep that charring. So I'm going to start with the mushrooms and the squash, which tend to take the longest amount of time to grill. So we're just going to take those mushrooms and set them right on the back side of the grill. And I like to do the gill side down first. Okay, and then same with the squash. And again, as you're getting ready to put them on there, if you don't think it's evenly coated enough in oil, you can always give it one more little toss. And set those right onto the grill. Once those have gotten 4 minutes or so on, they take about 8 minutes in total. We'll go ahead and start with our bell peppers and our scallions. So with the scallions, I like to just put those right on. Let's go ahead and get this corn out of the way. It's just about done. And so we'll go ahead and put more of those peppers on there. And again, those have been tossed with the olive oil, salt, and pepper, like all of our vegetables on here. Once we've got those on, we're just going to give those also about another 4 minutes in total. So just go ahead and turn those scallions one time. They don't take a lot of heat on those, but you can see how beautiful dark green they're getting. Got a little bit of the char starting to take place, and then give those squash one more last turn. You see how nice those are beginning to look, nice and tender. Check our mushrooms over here, and they're also just about there. Now, as I said earlier, there is the issue of when you're grilling that you can kind of remove some of the moisture from food. So I always like to, usually when I'm out back, I've got some cocktail, beverage, refreshment with me. So usually what I'll do is just go ahead and put whatever beverage I'm drinking, go ahead and drizzle a little bit on there, which again adds a little bit of moisture, as well as keeps everything moist, hydrated, and then imparts a nice extra layer of flavor in there. That cooks right off. But you can smell the delicious aroma that it causes. So once you've got that corn that comes off the grill, you're just going to take your knife and gently run right down the base of the cob. Try not to cut into the cob, and a nice sharp knife will do that perfectly. To build our grilled veg tostadas, we're just going to take our grilled flour tortillas that were drizzled with a little bit of olive oil. We're going to take a little bit of the grilled summer squash, sunburst squash. Go ahead and cut those, put a piece on each. This recipe that we showed you today, do about 4 to 5 tostadas. One nice slice of the grilled portobello mushroom. Okay. We'll take a little bit of that yellow pepper that we grilled. Go ahead and put those on there. The red and yellow. Then we've got a little bit of those scallions that we grilled. We're just going to take those, kind of run our knife through them ever so roughly. Those go right on top. Just tremendous flavor. You can smell the smoke on them. Set those there. And then, of course, we've got that grilled corn that we did earlier. So we take a little bit of that grilled corn that we cut off the cob, and that goes right on the top. Adds a little more color. And also, I've got a little crumbled cotija cheese. It's a Spanish-style cheese, kind of a fresh cheese. I'm just going to put a little bit of that right on top as well. A little more. I've got a couple of sprigs of cilantro. I'm just going to kind of hand tear and drop on there a little bit. So enjoy your garden, grill your vegetables. I'm going to finish these off with a little bit of salsa. Oh, that looks good. Where's that cold beer of mine? I'm Chef Todd, from the garden to the grill.
The projects that I work on relative to landscape design and gardening elements is usually a larger picture than that. We get subdivisions in and we're looking at how they're incorporating that subdivision with the neighborhood. And are there street trees? Street trees soften the hardscape element, which is very important to us because we want to create a sense of place in Salinas. We want, in the Monterey County, we want to make sure that there is greenscape, because greenscape makes the eye, when it sees a building, it makes the eye feel like, gosh, I can enter that. I can walk into that space. It feels good to me. We don't have a requirement per se, other than the requirement for a certain amount of landscaping or park space when a subdivision comes in. But for a house, it's important because it's like putting the icing on a cake. You have this beautiful house, and if you don't have landscaping, it's like eating just the cake cooked and not having any type of flowers or anything on the cake that we see. What's important is that it complements and that it's mindful, the landscape plan is mindful of xeriscape, that they're not using too much water. We're very sensitive to the water need in Monterey County, and so that's important to us. But what's most important is that when you look and you feel, when you look at a house and the design of the house, and you see landscaping, it's almost like you're creating a mini park or a mini entryway. You're saying, with that landscape, this is such and such development. And a lot of times the places that we remember are places where the landscaping is done very well. It doesn't matter how you live or where you live. It doesn't matter your economic background, if you're what the cost of your house is. You can have a beautiful street, a beautiful neighborhood by incorporating landscape into it.
Welcome to my garden project. It's going to be our how-to segment. I finally have carved out a space for gardening for myself in my backyard. And Steve has been helping me all from the very beginning. So we're beginning in this garden, and Steve began at the beginning with me about my soil. And it started with me bringing you a soil sample.
Yeah, that helped. Boy, I'll tell you, Maya's got a lot of enthusiasm for this space, and it's real representative of what we find here in Monterey County. Small space gardening, easy to maintain, easy to start with, easy to really enjoy yourself in the hobby of gardening. Well, the soil that she's got to work with here did need some work. It was the Salinas sample we were looking at earlier. It had good organic matter, it had good drainage, but it needed some more compost, some more humus. So what I recommended, because of the clay content, was to begin with some gypsum. She did apply some gypsum, looked like maybe about 10 pounds in here. She worked it in really deep to a depth of about 12 inches, and then she also applied some soil builder. Many soil builders available. You want something balanced to take care of that carbon-nitrogen ratio so that you've got the compost, but you've also got other ingredients like bat guano, kelp extract, blood meal, these types of things. She's done it all here, and as a result, we've got a really nice soil profile to begin with. Wow, look at this. I mean, this is really good stuff. She's amended, she's tilled, and she's ready to plant. Now, as I've talked about with her in the last few days here, really we need a plan before we begin. I mean, that's just the truth to any garden, and that's kind of where we're at now.
So the goals for my garden is that I want to have a vegetable garden. I want to be able to have a salad, I want to have tomatoes, some cucumbers, sunflowers in the back, a little homegrown corn, just something that I could say, let's eat something yummy for dinner, and you go out and pick it.
I love it.
So that's my goal for this space, but I also know that I could use some beneficial flowers to bring in insects. So what do you recommend as a plan for my garden?
In any small space, you want a focal point for guests and people enjoying your garden. The first recommendation I would have is to add something here. My thought would be maybe a bird bath or a water feature. It would draw guests to your garden in. A small path for access when the soil's wet wouldn't be a bad idea. You could use broken concrete if you're looking for something economical. I'd probably even recommend considering flagstone. An Arizona flagstone isn't all that expensive. It's probably the most economical way to get a strong stone that'll keep your feet less than muddy and allow access. You don't want to break up too much because you only have so much real estate to work with here. Clearly with this garden space, you can see that we've got one side and another. Full sun, abundance of sun, 8-10 hours a day, that's not a problem. It's pretty well sheltered from the wind. You've got a great space to work with. All right, some of the things that we put in this garden, I just want to reference a little closer. This is a soil builder. It's called Bumper Crop. It's available all over, and boy, does this help to really breathe life into soil that's tired and or new in the case of this vegetable garden. Also, the BIP gypsum here, this is called Soften Soil, and it truly is an amendment that does wonders for clay soils like in Salinas and down the Salinas Valley. One thing to point out, Maya did a great job cleaning out her garden. She pulled out a lot of rocks and some of these really hard to break down clay chunks. Boy, and there's debris in here. You got plastic, rebar. Any garden's got a lot of debris in it, so.
Well, and this is the kind of thing that makes it hard for an kind of a hobbyist gardener. You try something, I would try something in this space and it would fail. Why did it fail? Well, because how is my plant supposed to grow? Once we had the fun of rototilling, which thank you, my husband and my children, for rototilling, and I need to say it on television to thank them. This was what was coming up.
Sure.
And so rototilling, for people say rototilling, you think, oh yeah, I can do a shovel, I can do something else. It makes all the difference, and to make this space ready.
So now you've got the basics for a great garden.
So get out there and enjoy your garden, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. Let's get gardening.
Bye.